To chapter 15 of Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics.
Okay.
This is that exciting moment where we figure out how to make a thinking classroom for
Right.
real.
Yes.
With all 14 practices, not just piecemeal.
It's the whole thing.
We're going for a total transformation this time.
Full transformation, yeah.
What's interesting about this chapter is it really challenges that initial assumption
Uh-huh.
that all you have to do is give students good tasks, and then all of a sudden they'll be thinking.
Right.
The author, through years of research
Yeah.
with hundreds of teachers, found that tasks alone aren't enough.
No.
It's about the entire classroom ecosystem.
Yeah, it's the environment.
How those tasks are introduced,
Yep.
the environment,
Yeah.
and the specific sequence of implementing all 14 practices.
It's a system.
That makes total sense.
Yep.
I could definitely see how just throwing all 14 practices at students at once
Yeah.
would be overwhelming
Too
and maybe even counterproductive.
too much change at once.
So how did the author approach this sequencing conundrum?
Well, he created a really great visual roadmap.
Okay.
It's called the Building Thinking Classrooms Framework.
All right.
You can see that in figure 15.1.
Okay.
It breaks down the 14 practices into 4 toolkits,
Okay.
each of which is designed to be implemented in order,
Gotcha.
like building a house.
Okay.
You wouldn't start with the chandelier before you have the foundation.
All right. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Walk me through these toolkits.
Sure.
What's the foundation?
So Toolkit 1
Okay.
is all about changing the norms and routines of your classroom.
Okay.
Imagine your students walking in on the first day and bam!
Yeah.
No desks in rows.
Oh, wow.
Right? Instead, they see vertical, non-permanent surfaces everywhere, ready for collaboration,
Right.
sending that message
Yeah.
that this is a space for active thinking right from the get-go.
Wow. Talk about a first day shocker.
Yeah!
I can just imagine how that would shift the energy and expectations immediately. I bet there's some amazing stories from teachers who've actually done this.
Yeah, well, the book shares a story about a teacher who completely cleared out her classroom on the first day. The students came in and they were just in shock.
Wow.
But it sparked this incredible energy and buzz.
Yeah.
It set the stage for a year of thinking and collaborating in a totally new way.
That's so cool. But it's not just about the physical space, right?
Right.
Toolkit 1 also involves introducing thinking tasks early and varying them frequently.
Absolutely. The goal is to establish that culture of thinking right from the start. You're not easing them into it.
No?
You're diving in
Yeah.
with engaging, thought-provoking tasks, and that sends a signal for how this classroom is going to operate.
Right. Okay, so we've shaken things up with Toolkit 1.
Right.
And we've built our thinking classroom foundation.
Yeah.
What's next? What comes next in this construction project?
Well, Toolkit 2 focuses on shifting student behavior. So students are now expected to answer their own questions.
Okay.
They're encouraged to stand and move around while thinking.
Yeah.
They start to take ownership of their learning instead of relying on you, the teacher.
Right. So it sounds like students are really empowered in this phase.
Yeah, they are.
What about the teacher? Do they just fade into the background?
No, not at all. The teacher becomes more of a facilitator,
Okay.
guiding the learning process, providing support when needed.
Right.
It's a shift in the power dynamic
Yeah.
that requires teachers to let go of some control and to trust their students' abilities.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And one practice that really stands out to me in this toolkit is defunding the classroom.
Yes.
That sounds pretty radical.
It is.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, it could be as simple as moving your desk away from the front of the room.
Okay.
It's a physical shift that symbolizes a change in the traditional power structure.
Yeah.
It sends a message that learning is collaborative and student-driven.
It does.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be a big adjustment for some teachers,
Yeah.
but also incredibly liberating.
Very much so.
Letting go of that front of the room position must feel pretty empowering in its own way. So once those behavioral shifts are taking root,
Yeah.
what's next?
Well, then we move to Toolkit 3,
All right.
where the focus is on establishing a smooth classroom flow.
Gotcha.
This involves incorporating practices like hints,
Okay.
extensions, meaningful notes, and consolidation.
Okay.
It's about creating a learning environment
Okay.
where students can work autonomously
Okay.
and productively.
I see. So this is where all the hard work of the previous toolkits
Yes.
starts to pay off.
Yes.
The students are now used to collaborating, tackling challenging tasks,
Right.
and taking ownership of their learning so they're ready for this next level.
Exactly. Toolkit 3 capitalizes on that foundation and takes it further.
Okay.
One practice that's crucial here
Yeah.
is meaningful notes. And this isn't just about students copying information.
Right.
It's about them actively processing,
Okay.
synthesizing,
Yeah.
and making connections. It's about transforming collective synergy into individual understanding, as the book puts it.
Okay. That phrase, meaningful notes, is really sticking with me.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah.
What does it actually look like in a classroom?
So imagine this.
Okay.
Instead of simply lecturing, you give students a thought-provoking problem to tackle in groups.
Okay.
They brainstorm on those vertical surfaces we talked about,
Yeah.
bouncing ideas off each other. Then each student creates their own meaningful note,
Okay.
not just copying what's on the board,
Right.
but summarizing key takeaways,
Yeah.
drawing diagrams, or
Yeah.
even generating their own questions
Okay.
based on the discussion.
So it's about taking those collaborative insights
Yes.
and turning them into individual knowledge and understanding.
Mm,
I'm starting to see how all these practices are starting to connect
right,
and build upon each other.
right.
This is fascinating.
Yeah,
Okay, we've laid the foundation,
right.
we've shifted behaviors,
Yeah,
and we've established a flow.
right.
What's the final piece
Yeah,
of
yeah.
this classroom construction project?
yeah. We reach Toolkit 4, assessment. And this is where we really see a shift away
Okay.
from traditional grading
Yeah.
towards a more holistic view of student learning.
This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
I've always felt like traditional assessments don't quite capture
Right.
what it means to be a good thinker.
Right.
So what's different about Toolkit 4's approach?
It's about moving beyond just evaluating what students know
Okay.
and focusing on what they value.
Okay.
It's about using assessment to support the learning process itself,
Right.
not just to slap a grade on at the end.
I love that.
Yeah.
Assessing what they value.
Yeah.
Can you give me a concrete example
Yeah.
of what that might look like in the classroom?
Absolutely. Imagine you're teaching a unit on fractions.
Okay.
Instead of just testing their ability to add and subtract fractions,
Right.
you could also assess their problem-solving strategies,
Okay.
their willingness to take risks
Right.
and try different approaches,
Yeah.
their ability to explain their thinking to others,
Okay.
and their persistence when faced with a challenging problem.
That makes so much sense. It's about valuing those habits of mind,
Yeah.
right? Those dispositions that are essential for success
Absolutely.
in any field, not just math.
Right.
So you're not just preparing them for a test.
No.
You're preparing them for life.
Exactly. It's about seeing the whole student,
Right.
not just the sum of their test scores.
Yeah.
And this toolkit offers some really practical strategies for doing just that.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, instead of just grading a project,
Okay.
you might have students reflect on their learning process,
Okay.
identify their strengths and areas for growth, and even set goals for future learning.
Right.
This empowers them to take ownership of their assessment
Yeah.
and see it as a valuable learning tool.
I can see how that would be incredibly powerful for students.
It is.
Right. It shifts that focus from getting a good grade
Yep.
to becoming a better learner,
Right.
which is ultimately what we want, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it also makes assessment much more meaningful and relevant to their lives.
It does.
Speaking of meaningful, let's circle back to those meaningful notes
Yes.
we talked about earlier.
Yes.
The book actually highlights some fascinating research findings related to this practice.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, the author found that while students were great at collaborating and problem solving in groups,
Okay.
they often struggled to transfer that knowledge
Really?
to individual work.
Interesting.
So they were great collaborators.
Yeah.
But they sometimes struggled when they were working on their own.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we bridge that gap then
But
between collaborative
yeah.
and individual understanding?
That's where practices like consolidation from the bottom
Okay.
and meaningful notes become really important.
Okay.
They provide that crucial link
Yeah.
between working together and owning that knowledge individually.
Okay. Remind me how consolidation from the bottom works.
So it's a strategy where instead of the teacher leading a whole class discussion
Okay.
to summarize the key takeaways,
Right.
the students do it themselves.
Okay.
They work in small groups
Okay.
to consolidate their understanding.
Right.
And then representatives from each group share their insights with the whole class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a mini presentation,
Right.
but driven by student insights
Exactly.
rather than teacher-led summaries.
Right.
I love that. It's like turning the classroom upside down
Yeah.
in a good way.
Yes, in a good way.
And this approach is so powerful because it forces students to articulate their understanding
Yes.
clearly and concisely.
Yeah.
It also allows them to see different perspectives and interpretations,
Right.
which can really deepen their own understanding.
Absolutely.
This all ties back to that idea of maintaining flow, right?
Yes.
If you've already established those norms of thinking and collaborating,
Right.
this consolidation process just becomes a natural extension of the learning,
Right.
not an extra chore.
It's just what you do.
Right. It becomes a seamless part of the thinking classroom routine.
Exactly.
This is all incredibly helpful. I feel like we've unpacked so much already.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear more about those specific practices in Toolkit 4.
Okay.
You mentioned helping students see where they are and where they're going.
Uh-huh.
Can you expand on that a bit?
Yes. It's all about helping students develop that metacognitive muscle,
Yeah.
that ability to reflect on their own thinking
Yeah.
and to identify areas for growth. It's like giving them a map and a compass for their learning journey.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So what are some of the tools then that we can use
Okay.
to equip our students with that map and compass?
One tool the book suggests is check your understanding questions.
Okay.
Those are quick, informal checks that we can sprinkle throughout our lessons.
Okay.
They help students gauge their own comprehension and pinpoint areas where they might be getting lost.
That's so simple, yet so effective. I can see how that would help keep students actively engaged in the learning process rather than just passively absorbing information.
Right. They're monitoring their own understanding.
Absolutely. And then you have understand where you are going activities.
Right.
These are more about helping students connect individual lessons to the bigger picture, the overall learning goals and objectives.
It's about providing context and purpose.
It's like making sure they don't just see individual trees, but also the whole forest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these activities can take many forms.
Yeah.
It could be a simple class discussion at the beginning of a unit where you co-create learning goals with your students.
Yeah.
Or it could be a culminating project that requires them to apply their knowledge to a real-world problem.
This all sounds so fantastic, but I know some teachers might be thinking, this is all well and good, but how do I actually find the time for all of this?
Right.
It's a valid concern, right?
Totally.
Teachers are already stretched thin.
They are. Yeah, it's a very real concern.
Right.
But the beauty of this framework is that it's designed to be sustainable. The author emphasizes that by establishing efficient routines and procedures, you actually free up more time for deeper learning and personalized feedback.
So it's not about adding more to our plates.
No.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Streamlining our practices so that assessment becomes a natural integrated part of our teaching, not a separate time-consuming chore.
Exactly. And remember, the best time to introduce something new to a system is at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So if you start building these practices into your classroom culture from day one, they'll become second nature for both you and your students.
Right. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's about setting the tone from the very beginning, establishing those expectations and routines that will support a thinking classroom throughout the year.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's say a teacher is ready to take the plunge.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges they might face in actually implementing this framework?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is simply the inertia of traditional classroom practices.
Right.
We've been conditioned to think about teaching and assessment in a certain way for so long that it can be hard to break free from those ingrained habits.
It's like we're stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
Even if we know there's a better way.
Even if we know,
Right.
Yeah. So it requires a real mindset shift.
Okay.
Challenging those long-held assumptions about what a classroom should look like and how learning should happen.
It sounds like embracing this framework is not just about changing our teaching practices, but also about changing our beliefs about teaching and learning.
Exactly. It's a much deeper shift.
That's a profound shift.
It is.
And it's a journey that requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to embrace discomfort.
Yes, definitely.
There will be bumps along the way.
Absolutely.
Moments of doubt.
Yeah.
And maybe even some pushback from students or colleagues who are accustomed to the old way of doing things.
It's the old way.
So resilience is key.
Yes.
And a healthy dose of self-compassion.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. We're all learning and growing
Yes.
as educators, and it's okay to make mistakes.
It's part of the process.
Yeah, along the way.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned the importance of community.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, building a thinking classroom is not a solo endeavor.
Okay.
It's so much easier and more rewarding when you have a network of other teachers who are on the same journey.
Right.
You can share ideas, troubleshoot challenges, celebrate successes, and just encourage each other along the way.
It's like having a hiking buddy.
It is.
For this challenging but ultimately rewarding climb.
Exactly.
Right. You're not alone on this path.
You're not alone.
And there are so many ways to find that support.
There are.
There are online communities, professional development workshops, even just informal conversations with colleagues at your school.
Right, exactly.
So reach out, connect, and learn from each other.
Absolutely.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
We've explored the entire Building Thinking Classrooms framework.
We have.
From the foundational shifts of Toolkit 1 to the transformative assessment practices of Toolkit 4.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of how all 14 practices work together to create a truly vibrant and engaging learning environment.
It's powerful stuff.
It is powerful stuff,
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about this framework being like a new language. What's one key phrase or sentence from this new language that you hope will stick with our listeners?
I think the most important phrase is assessment should be a reflection of a teacher's practice.
Okay.
And that really encapsulates the idea that assessment isn't a separate thing, but an integral part of the learning process itself. It's about aligning our assessment practices with the values and goals of a thinking classroom.
Right, and that's so powerful.
It is.
It's a reminder that we're not just assessing students' knowledge. But we're also assessing our own teaching practices.
We are. We're reflecting.
We're constantly learning and growing alongside our students.
Absolutely.
That's what makes this work so exciting and rewarding.
I agree.
On that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Okay.
But I don't want this conversation to end here.
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay.
Imagine your classroom a year from now. What will be different after implementing this framework?
What will your students be capable of that they weren't before?
What new possibilities will open up for them and for you as you embark on this journey together?
It's an exciting journey.
It is. Hold on to those questions, fellow educators. As you begin your thinking classroom journey.
You got this.
You've got the tools. You've got the plan.
Go build that forest.
Now go build that forest.